Ready? Is it recording?
Yes.
Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, entitled The First Step in God Realization, and we're on verse 4. Dehapatya Kalatradeshu Dehapatya Kalatradeshu Atma Sanyeshu Asatsu Api. Now those U's that I pronounce are going to turn into V's to make the syllables flow. Atma Sanyeshu Asatswapi. Oh, it's not flowing over. Atma Sanyeshu Asatswapi. Tesham Pramato Nidhanam Tesham Pramato Nidhanam Pashan Api Na Pashyati Pashan Api Na Pashyati Dehapatya Kalatradeshu Atma Sanyeshu Asatswapi Tesham Pramato Nidhanam Pasyan Api Na Pashyati Dehapatya Kalatradeshu Atma Sanyeshu Asatswapi Tesham Pramato Nidhanam Pasyan Api Na Pashyati. I think that was two, so do one more. Dehapatya Kalatradeshu Atma Sanyeshu Asatsyapi Tesham Pramato Nidhanam Pasyan Api Na Pashyati. Sorry, I was having trouble getting the rhythm right. Okay, please chant.
Dehapatya Kalatradeshu Atma Sanyeshu Asatswa Api Tesham Pramato Nidhanam Pashyanapi Na Pashyati.
Dehapatya Kalatradeshu Atma Sanyeshu Asatswapi Tesham Pramato Nidhanam Pasyan Api Na Pashyati.
Dehapatya Kalatradeshu Atma Sanyeshu Tasam Pramato Nidhanam Pasyan Api Na Pashyati.
Dehapatya Kalatradeshu
Atma Sanyeshu Asatswati Tesham Pramato Nidhanam Pasyan Api Na Pashyati.
Dehapatya Kalatradeshu Atma Sanyeshu Asatswapi Tesham Pramato Nidhanam pashyati.
Pashyanapi na pasyati.
Dehapatyo kalatrasehu.
Deha payatananesu.
Atmaket semyestava satyo api.
Atma sinyasasati.
Sampramato merhanam.
Desham bhanato nihanam.
Pasyanapi na pasyatati.
Pasyanapi na pasyati.
It was very good. Very good.
Okay, so word meanings. Deha,
Deha,
body.
body.
Apatya,
Apatya,
children.
children.
Kalatra,
Kalatra,
wife.
wife.
Adishu,
Adesu,
and in everything in relation to them.
and in everything in relation to them.
Atma,
Atma,
own.
known,
Own,
own,
like my own.
own.
Sainyeshu,
Sanyasu,
fighting soldiers.
fighting soldiers.
Asatsu,
Atsatsu,
fallible.
fallible.
Api,
Api,
in spite of.
in spite of.
Tesham,
Tesham,
all of them.
all of them.
Pramataha,
From Aktaha
too attached.
to attached.
Nihanam,
Nihanam,
destruction.
destruction.
Pashyan,
Pasyan,
having been experienced.
having been experienced.
Api,
Api,
although.
although.
Na,
Na,
does not.
does not.
Pashyati,
Pasyati,
see it.
see it.
It's an interesting bunch of words, right? It looks like some words that we like, and then some buts. That doesn't sound like it's going to be so good. So here's the translation. Persons devoid of Atma Tattva do not inquire into the problems of life, being too attached to the fallible soldiers, like the body, children, and wife. Although sufficiently experienced, they still do not see their inevitable destruction. So please repeat after me. Persons devoid of Atma Tattva
Persons devoid of Atma Tattva
do not inquire into the problems of life,
do not inquire into the problems of life.
being too attached to the fallible soldiers,
Being too attached to the fallible soldiers,
like the body, children, and wife.
like the body, children, and wife.
Although sufficiently experienced,
Although it's sufficiently experienced,
they still do not see their inevitable destruction.
they still do not see the inevitable destruction.
The purport. Praise divine graces of Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
This material world is called the world of death. Every living being, beginning from Brahma, whose duration of life is some thousands of millions of years, down to the germs who live for a few seconds only, is struggling for existence. Therefore, this life is a sort of fight with material nature, which imposes death upon all. In the human form of life, a living being is competent enough to come to an understanding of this great struggle for existence. But being too attached to family members, society, country, etc., he wants to win over the invincible material nature by the aid of bodily strength, children, wife, relatives, etc. Although he is sufficiently experienced in the matter by dint of past experience and previous examples of his deceased predecessors, he does not see that the so-called fighting soldiers, like the children, relatives, society members, and countrymen, are all fallible in the great struggle. One should examine the fact that his father or his father's father has already died, and that he himself is therefore also sure to die. And similarly, his children, who are the would-be fathers of their children, will also die in due course. No one will survive in this struggle with material nature. The history of human society definitely proves it. Yet the foolish people still suggest that in the future they will be able to live perpetually with the help of material science. This poor fund of knowledge exhibited by human society is certainly misleading, and it is all due to ignoring the constitution of the living soul. This material world exists only as a dream, due to our attachment to it. Otherwise, the living soul is always different from the material nature. The great ocean of material nature is tossing with the waves of time, and the so-called living conditions are something like foaming bubbles, which appear before us as bodily self, wife, children, society, countrymen, etc. Due to a lack of knowledge of self, we become victimized by the force of ignorance, and thus spoil the valuable energy of human life in a vain search after permanent living conditions, which are impossible in this material world. So, no, it's not the end.
Okay.
Our friends, relatives, and so-called wives and children are not only fallible, but also bewildered by the outward glamour of material existence. As such, they cannot save us. Still, we think that we are safe within the orbit of family, society, or country. The whole materialistic advancement of human civilization is like the decoration of a dead body. Everyone is a dead body, flapping only for a few days. And yet all the energy of human life is being wasted in the decoration of this dead body. Shukadeva Goswami is pointing out the duty of the human being after showing the actual position of bewildered human activities. Persons who are devoid of the knowledge of Atma Tattva are misguided, but those who are devotees of the Lord and have perfect realization of transcendental knowledge are not bewildered. So this time it is the end. So Oma Gyana Timavandasya Gyana Jana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and the spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. That verse is found in the very beginning of the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. Let there be no mysteries. Where do they get those verses? They are all found somewhere. So that one is quoted right at the beginning of the introduction. And so here we are. So I can just start with decoration of a dead body. The whole, it's like the decoration of the body's going to die. So, in a sense, we should consider it as good as dead and not think it's going to save us. Because that's not what we do. We think we have a family, we have a friend, we have friends, we have a position in society, and this is going to save us. Well, it does for a while. But it's not going to save us from the real thing that's going to happen. And the bad part about death, if you don't work on your spiritual life, you don't know where you're going next. And you'll have to die again and again and again and again. And nobody ever wants to die, and it's going to keep happening. And you're going to be, not only that, you're going to be in different species. I've met people who are just fine with this. They're looking only at the good side, some kind of sentimental idea, and they're looking at only the good side of things. They're never worried about whether, will I take my next birth in some kind of war-torn place in Africa or Asia or something like that, and suffer intensely? Will I starve? Will I be in an animal body? If I'm in an animal body, will it be a nice situation, or will I be kicked and running around in the street, not knowing why? It's not always nice. People say, oh, I'd like to be a dog. Well, what dog do you get to be? Do you get to be the pampered dog for a while? Or do you get to be the dog in the street that's starving and kicked, stones thrown at it? What dog? So people think that reincarnation, some of these people think there's no reincarnation. Some of these people, subconsciously, people just think they're going to live forever. And if they think that there is reincarnation, they think it's only going to be up. You're going to only get something better. It's all a natural evolution. Well, it's an evolution of our consciousness, but we can devolve our consciousness too. We can act like a dog in our human form of life and become a dog. And who knows where we go from there. So it's very, very important to use this human form of life to pursue spiritual matters, to understand that we're not this body. And this is one of the... Bhagavad Gita actually has two kinds of knowledge. I used to say three, but then I understood more deeply. There's two levels of knowledge. One is the foundational knowledge. We're not this body and we're not God. There's a God, there's a soul, and there's bodies. This is foundational knowledge. So, to understand, first of all, that we're neither the God nor the body. We're eternal individual souls, eternally so. And then, to know this, the solution is to develop our love for Krishna. Krishna is God, and to develop our love for Krishna and go back to the spiritual world where we belong, where we won't have to die all the time and restart and relearn everything and make mistakes again, and who knows where we go, what we're going to suffer, what karma we have. We surrender to Krishna, and that frees us from good and bad karma. So we don't have to come back to get good karma either and be in a dangerous position to get more bad karma. So all karma is not good for us. And there's three kinds of karma. There's good karma, bad karma, and a-karma, no karma. So karma means, in context, karma means the benefits you get from doing your duty properly. Then V karma is another kind of karma. V means different kind. So V karma means bad karma. So if you don't do your duty or don't do it right or do things you should not do, then you get V karma, which is bad karma. Best of all, get a karma, which means you're doing everything for Krishna, and there's no karma to it, because that's not a material activity. Then it's spiritual activity. So we do things for Krishna. We don't get karma. We can develop our love for Krishna, because then Krishna helps us. Then we can go back to Godhead and not face any more deaths. We have to die one more time at least. Or at most maybe just one or two more times or something if we're pursuing our spiritual life seriously. So this discussion is about people who are not pursuing their spiritual life seriously. They don't have any knowledge. Prabhupada uses this wonderful expression, a poor fund of knowledge. Like you have nothing in your bank account. So in your account of knowledge, you have nothing. So you think, everything is about this body. My body will protect me. My family will protect me. I'm safe. And then heart attack comes, or car crash comes, or something. Maybe war comes. And it's like, you just feel the fear of death again. We're always feeling fear of death, but sometimes we situate it so that we feel safe and it's got boundaries around. We feel safe, but we're going to die anyway. Everybody has always died. There's no exceptions. The only people who haven't died yet are those who haven't died yet. And, everybody is going to die, and we know this. But somehow deep inside you think, I'm not going to die. And there's some justification for thinking this way, because deep inside we know subconsciously that we are eternal spirit souls. So of course we're not going to die. However, so we have a sense of that truth, but we think that we are the body. That's called false ego. I am this body. And the body is going to die. And whatever is associated with this body, including this name, this looks, this history, this set of interests and skills and everything, this set of relationships, all this, we're going to lose it. It's all going to be gone. And we'll have a whole different set. Or we will uncover our eternal spiritual position. It's called constitutional position. Prabhupada uses that expression, our constitutional position, which means who we really are before Krishna in the spiritual world. We have an identity up there. We have to find our way back to it. For some reason, we didn't want to act according to the system up there is everybody loves Krishna, everybody's happy doing it, but Krishna is so attractive, so beautiful, that you can also get an idea, wow, I would like to be Krishna. That's the fatal idea. It means you have to come down here where you have to die a lot. So it is a fatal idea. And it's free choice. Up there, there's no influence of material nature. There's no illusion. The only illusion that exists in the spiritual world is Krishna covers the fact that he's God, so that you can be close to him without being overwhelmed by awe and reverence. So he wants intimate relationships. He wants friends. So that's the only kind of illusion there is up there. And down here, there's all kinds of illusion tricking us every step of the way. We think we're the body. We don't think that we have to serve God. There's all these illusions. But up there, it's total free choice. Somehow, we're the ones who thought, I want to be Krishna. And so, okay, there's a material world for people to go down there and try. So all of us are down here trying to be Krishna, competing. Who's the most beautiful? Who's the most powerful? Who owns the most? Who can tell others what to do? Who is the most free from bad effects, etc., etc. So we're all trying to be Krishna, but none of us going to make it. We're not Krishna. So, let's see, no one will survive in this struggle. And yet we try to survive. So, let's see, some things I was going to say from this. Let's look over this first one. So this material world exists as a dream. It's real, but the interpretation of it is a dream. It's really Krishna's energy which really exists. It's made of, what we see is made of Krishna's inferior energy which has no consciousness in its own right, and Krishna pervades it with his own consciousness and he controls it. So now again, if we think we're going to fight material nature, we're little tiny individual souls, and material nature may have no consciousness in its own right. We may think we can control it, because we do in certain ways. Control nature, because we're allowed to, but we think we're going to control, but it's actually going to control us because it's controlled by somebody way bigger than us. And so we will not win. We will lose. So it's a poor fund of knowledge. It's misleading, ignoring the constitution of the living soul. The material world exists only as a dream due to our attachment to it. Our attachment makes it happy or sad, makes happiness and distress. Because we're attached to, first of all, we're attached to our body, which is made up of senses. And the senses must be pleased, otherwise we're miserable. So if the senses are pleased, we keep trying to please our senses, and it always lasts just a little while, and we have to keep trying, then as long as we can succeed pretty much, then we're not miserable. But the basic consideration, the basic situation is misery. And somebody who has good karma in this life will argue that, no, basically I'm happy. But your happiness is not like the happiness from loving Krishna, which is way, way higher and more happy than you can imagine if you're thinking of material happiness. But we don't know that. It's hard to know that. We've forgotten our constitutional position, because when we come to the material world, Krishna's a gentleman. You didn't want to love me, okay. You want to try to be me. The only way you can actually try and get satisfied in your efforts is if you can't see me anymore. So he covers himself with illusion, with all this illusion. Actually, his energy, his illusory potency covers us, and that his energy is always considered female. So we say Maya, who is Krishna's energy, she covers us as a service to him. Ultimately, it's Krishna. But he expands in so many ways because he likes this multiplicity of activities. So he expands himself in many ways. And so Maya covers our real knowledge. And Maya is really strong. We are in the most perfect prison. There is no way out except surrender to Krishna. Even those who meditate, like some systems of meditation, and achieve liberation, it's conceivably possible to achieve liberation for a while. But you know what? If the liberation is not a liberation of love of Krishna, the soul will not be satisfied. The soul will seek activity, because it will be an inactive state. Just liberated from everything, inactive. Souls are persons. Souls want activity, souls want relationship. So an impersonal meditator who achieves some kind of liberation and goes to the light will eventually, in some time frame or something, will hanker for relationship and activity. And since it's not based on love of Krishna, only activity is in the material world known to that particular soul. So they come back down, and because they're very austere, they take up philanthropic activities, build hospitals or something. But then they're just taking care of people's bodies, and they haven't really accomplished anything. They're still in the bodily platform, still thinking that way. So really, what we were looking for is a liberation of pure love for Krishna, because then we are totally satisfied. We have activity, we have relationship, we have the relationship we've been looking for. Always somebody perfect. Somebody who will always be our friend, who is perfectly beautiful, who is perfectly good, who will always be our friend. We're looking for that. Sometimes we find somebody who is for a while something like that, but then even if it's pretty near perfect, we still have to die and lose it. So it's not satisfying. The only thing that satisfies us is love for Krishna. So I thought of some things I wanted to read. I'm on my phone here. Bhagavad Gita now. second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we have, let's see, Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is really troubled because he's got to go fight a war. And this war isn't an ordinary battle. This war is just between one kingdom and another, one army and another. It's all the armies of the world. Billions of men are there lined up to kill each other, and Arjuna sees they're all going to die. And he's very disturbed about this, so he really needs some transcendental knowledge right now. So Bhagavad Gita was spoken right before this battle. And let's see, I want to find. I don't know, the whole chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita is good. First of all, verses 12 through 30 are just simply about understanding the difference between the body and the soul. That's the foundational knowledge that Krishna wants to establish. Arjuna has forgotten. He's thinking everybody is their body all of a sudden. It's a powerful force, this false ego. It's a really powerful force. And looking at all these armies and thinking everybody is going to have to die, Arjuna has forgotten that nobody is their body. And so he's all of a sudden really worried. And we do that too. When we hear bad news about some terrible disaster somewhere in the world, we just think, oh no, those poor people. And we naturally feel compassion, and because we don't want anybody to suffer. And so we think in terms of their body. So it's kind of natural. But we need to always remember the spiritual truth. And perhaps they are experiencing some karma and getting it out of their way, and then maybe they'll have a better life next time or something, who knows. But not that we're supposed to not care about anybody suffering. Vaishnavas have compassion, but their compassion is expressed in desiring to help people have transcendental knowledge so they can escape this whole sea of birth and death, death's going to happen somehow or other. I like to say there aren't so many nice ways to die. There are lots of bad ways to die. People want to die in their sleep so they don't know they died. So it's painless. But everybody doesn't get to do that. Sometimes they die in a disaster or a war or a terrible painful sickness or something. So sometimes people die too young. It's all this death, sea of death. And real compassion is, yes, feeling suffering when others are suffering. You feel pain when others are feeling pain. It's compassion, compassion, feel with. But the solution is mainly to help people understand they are not the body and help them find Krishna and develop their relationship with Krishna, with God, some way or another with God. And I'll point blank say the best way is with Krishna, because you get to know more about God in Krishna consciousness than in any other systems. All the same God, but we have more knowledge about Him. So more knowledge we have about somebody that wonderful, the more you love Him. So if the object is to love God, this is a really good way to do it, because you get so much knowledge about God. And when you hear about Krishna, you naturally fall in love with Him. So He's so beautiful. So anyways, the first, Krishna explains to Arjuna that nobody is their body. Then he explains and how the body is temporary. I can read a lot of things here. Way up in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it said that the material nature is eternal. So we know in chapter 2, the body is temporary. In chapter 13, material nature is eternal. So the energy of Krishna is eternally existing, but it gets formed temporarily into different forms that we then inhabit and identify with, desperately fearing death and having to leave it. So the forms are temporary, but the material energy is an eternal energy of Krishna, but not conscious in its own right. We give it consciousness by inhabiting it. We inhabit the body, and then the body seems conscious because we're in it. And then this description of like the bubbles that was in the purport, there's this ocean of death, also ocean of material forms that are temporary, forming and dying and everything. So it's like an ocean that's really, a lot of waves, and so there's froth and bubbles. Bubbles are temporary, they go away. So out of this like stratum of unconscious, inferior material energy of Krishna, inhabited by Krishna's consciousness, it's like an ocean being formed into different bubbles. So we get a bubble for a while, and we get to associate with some bubbles for a while, but bubbles don't last. And it goes back into what happens when you bury a body. It's going to sooner or later decompose. And when we die, the body is going to be eaten by something, or somehow it's going to decompose and rejoin the elements. Or if you get burned in a fire or something, it's somehow rejoining the elements. And so that's what that means about the bubbles. So we're so attached to the bubbles. And isn't it frightening? The bubbles we know are going to dissolve again. So everybody fears death. Nobody wants to lose their loved ones. Nobody wants to lose their body. It's a terrible fear that people say, I'm not afraid of death, I'm just afraid of sharks. I'm not afraid of death, but I'm afraid of fire. I'm not afraid of death, but I'm afraid I won't have enough to eat. Well, there's only one reason why you're afraid of those things, because they make you die. Well, another reason might cause you pain. And that cause you so much pain you wish you did die. So people say they're not afraid of death, but they are. So anyway, later on in the chapter, rather than looking at verses, I'll just say, what time is it?
It's time.
It's 8:30. Okay. So it also, Arjuna asks Krishna, how do you tell somebody who is, what does he say, somebody who's wise and knows and isn't disturbed? How do you recognize that person? And Krishna says, they have no desire for sense gratification. So in Krishna consciousness, we practice a lifestyle that helps us give up our attachment to sense gratification. So we have 4 regulative principles that we vow when we take initiation. We vow no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling. Okay, the no gambling part is the easiest thing unless you're into real estate or something like that. But basically, you don't go there where they gamble. Fine. Most people don't have a problem with that. No meat eating, that's getting popular these days. People are starting to understand, yes, that's quite possible and healthy. We don't want to eat meat because we don't want to participate in killing animals. That's bad karma, and it interrupts the soul and the animal body's progress in going from body to body and evolving to some higher consciousness someday. It messes with their progress and causes them pain. So we have no business doing that to other living entities. And we have no business eating things that put us in the mode of ignorance. Because eating flesh is like, puts us down. And so no meat eating. No intoxication, that's pretty obvious. Why we should not use intoxication, because Krishna consciousness takes a clear head. We don't cheat and make ourselves feel like we got somewhere where we didn't yet. It's got to be honest progress in spiritual life. So then, illicit sex. Okay, there's 2 levels of illicit sex being talked about. One is the same as the Christians or any religion say, no sex outside marriage. That's easy to understand. All religions say that. But we go a little deeper. If you're really serious about your spiritual progress, illicit sex, even in marriage, means sex not intended to produce a child. If there's a certain time when, it's time to produce a child, and the body can produce a child, then that's the time. And otherwise, why? Because sex life is possibly the biggest attachment to our bodies and our material life and our illusions. So if we don't have a rule that helps us practice not being attached to that, our progress will be much slower, and we will not understand. So Krishna says in chapter 4 that you can go back to Godhead if you understand the transcendental nature of His form and His appearance. Well, how can we understand the transcendental nature of Krishna if we can't understand our own transcendental nature? And if we still think that we are the body and it's all about sense gratification, how will we understand that? So if we want to be serious about Krishna consciousness, that is the guiding instruction. So, and it's a long path, basically. Usually it's a long path because we have attachments deep in our subconscious that we don't know about. They surface slowly. So that's why we have to chant the Hare Krishna mantra regularly for years and years to see ourselves making progress in that chanting, and practice the 4 regulative principles, and practice activities of devotional service, and reading all of Prabhupada's books. We've been in the material world for millions and millions of lifetimes. We have deep subconscious attachments that we don't even know about, desires, karma waiting for us, etc. So it's a long process getting detached from all of that. So this is the Krishna consciousness path. So, okay, since it's 8:30, he knows when I'm about to wrap up, so off comes the hand. Okay, questions? And you got the first one. Questions or comments?
It's interesting that the verse talks about family and such, and there's an extension. Someone will say, and I've heard this in a past class, this was 10 years ago, someone said, well, I'm not concerned about myself, I'm just concerned about my kids, and I want them to, like, take care of them. That's called extended selfishness. Because you're not there, they come from you, so you're really taking care of you vicariously through them.
You can't say you care or love anybody until you love everybody, and you see souls in every kind of living being as all equal souls. Otherwise, you're just loving your body or what came from your body. So that's why it's a long process to learn this.
Second,
we begin, you get to experience success in the beginning too. But then it grows and grows. Yeah.
second part of that was the concern that they don't die, so you want to feed them and take care of them and house them. But Prabhupada said that if a man says that he's not afraid of death, then he's a fool. So, because sometimes, I have to get to the point where I'm not afraid of death. Prabhupada didn't say get to the point where you're not afraid of death. Get to the point that you're ready. What was that? Die today and live forever? But it said, you mentioned in 2:12 in the Bhagavad Gita, that section, 2:12 on, was on a particular topic.
I'm knowing the difference between the body and the soul.
Knowing the difference between the body and the soul. It's interesting that 2:11 says the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, while speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. And that is living a dead body. Because the soul never dies.
Right. And it doesn't mean we don't care about them. We don't want people to suffer. We don't want people to die again, and we don't want them to just not die once. We want them to not keep on dying too. We want to give them something where they can get out of this mess.
And that's the main reason. We don't want to deter their spiritual path and have to start again, go back to zero, go back to zero, go back to start, go back to start, go back to start.
The trouble with untimely death is it interrupts some progress. Like if somebody's murdered or suicide or something like that, it interrupts progress. And so we, that's generally frowned upon by all societies.
And that very thing means that that's not really in Krishna's will.
What?
That we say, oh, so-and-so died, that must have been their karma. But there's such a thing as an untimely death. Yeah. That, somebody goes and destroys someone.
Which is really hard to understand because that might be their karma. Karma is very intricate.
Right.
But at any rate, karma, the world of karma is a dangerous place to be.
And last point, the only thing that lasts is devotional service. So if we're concerned about being with our families and friends, if we do devotional service with them, then that goes to the spiritual realm also. So we will be with ISKCON.
Although you'll have a relationship, but you won't be the same relationship as family. Somebody's a parent, somebody's a child.
Yeah.
Because we have our eternal constitutional position in the spiritual world where each of us has a unique personality and each of us has a unique service and connection to Krishna.
And that's the Siddha Daya.
That's what we awaken by devotional service. So, whatever family we are, we will have a relation. Our relationship will be based on the service we did together, and that in the spiritual world will manifest as our eternal natural service to Krishna. So, I don't know exactly how we will, the techniques of how it's all going to connect, but there's maybe a reason why certain souls are born into a time where they can join the movement and they will be together in the spiritual world. So there's a lot of stuff we don't know.
And that's pronounced Siddha Daya.
Siddha Daya is your eternal form.
Yeah.
Yeah. Siddha means eternal and Deha means body. So your eternal body is your constitutional nature in Krishna's service, waiting for you to rejoin it in the spiritual world.
And you may be a man here, you can be a lady here,
Yeah.
or a lady, whatever.
It's all depend on your desire of how to serve Krishna, which is your natural desire in the spiritual world. So, anybody have any more questions? Yeah. Anne.
Okay, I do have a question. Since we talked a little about Krishna and Radharani, when I was taught the story of Krishna and Radharani, I was taught it as a dance. And
You say more slowly.
when I was taught the story of Radha and Krishna, I was taught it as a story of a dance between Radha and Krishna, and of Radha basically going through the sense of the human emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and as she's falling in love with Krishna,
Mm-hmm.
and the human emotions sort of putting her in a state of spinning until she finally collapses and surrenders, and then she's able to awaken and find herself and ascend into the highest consciousness. And so I'm curious, with your studies in the Bhagavad Gita, are there texts that can take us through, with Radharani and her, the emotions? Would you say that she goes through the human emotions into ascension? Are there texts that take us through that, and then, into her journey of ascension? And then, so I'm also curious too if there's any indication that Radharani and Sri Krishna would have gone on to procreate life between them, as he's the Supreme Godhead, and then she ascends into this. Where does it go from there? As she goes, seems like through human emotions, and then must have to come up to the highest.
We have the whole answer to this, and you gradually understand. You have to read Prabhupada's books, but I will try to answer a little bit. We have to grow into it. The danger of going straight to the 10th canto, skipping the first 9, persons who are preaching that way, and start with Radha and Krishna. You have no foundation yet to understand the difference between pure spiritual love and the love we experience here. You have no foundation yet. So nobody should teach that way. It's frowned upon by the bona fide spiritual minds. They frown upon that kind of teaching to beginners, because you're bound to become sahajya, which means that you think we're already there, and you're measuring it by human emotions, which have to do with the body. He has to. So therefore, we don't in Krishna, in the Hare Krishna movement, we do talk about Radha and Krishna certainly, but we don't go there yet. You have to have a whole foundation first. And then, after years, then you can understand it right. So it's all kind of cautions. So now we have Radha and Krishna on the altar, but they're very formal. So it's said that in Vrindavan, Radha and Krishna are cowherd village people, right? So it's very intimate and informal and simple. Whereas we worship Radha and Krishna in the temple as Lakshmi and Narayan. Lakshmi is the goddess of fortune. Narayan is more awe and reverence kind of mood. So if we don't make a foundation of awe and reverence that we later can transcend because we are spiritual now, we have to first have a foundation of awe and reverence. So the first thing to focus on is understanding that you're not that body, and understanding that you're not God. And that's the foundational understanding in Bhagavad Gita. Then do devotional service and love Krishna. And as far as these emotions, human emotions are a mere imitation. They're a perverted reflection. And that's Radha and Krishna have the pure emotions. But there's no procreation because souls are eternal. And that they are spiritual forms, pure spiritual forms. And all the souls are eternal. So just what we would love to have as imitation Krishnas is all kinds of sex life without having to worry about procreation happening. People practice it and then, oops, we got pregnant, It's what humans want, right? Because we came here to imitate Krishna. So the idea is to understand that we're worshiping the togetherness of Radha and Krishna, which is pure spiritual togetherness. We don't identify with it. We don't try to imitate it. We don't think we're there. We understand the difference. Is that Get you
You
kind
answered
of
that
balance
really
it.
beautifully. Thank
Huh?
you. You answered that beautifully. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? She left. Do you have to say? Yeah.
It was interesting. Prabhupada translated, or he wrote the 10th canto for us. He translated it for us, so he could set the mode and set the scene correctly. Not that he wanted us to read it first and just stay in it and live
actually,
in it.
the Krishna book does not go that deep into this aspect.
Right.
It doesn't. It's very, very delicately handled. And in fact, in the 10th canto, the person speaking the Bhagavatam did not mention. Did not mention Radharani's name. Yeah, you have to like set off fireworks or something. Let's see. Shukadeva Goswami did not mention Radharani's name because that would have set him into so much ecstasy that he wouldn't have been able to speak the Bhagavatam anymore. So he just talked about her kind of like indirectly, named her as this one gopi said this, and he didn't say Radharani's name. Radharani's name, however, does appear in the Nectar of Devotion also. Besides, in Krishna book, it's there a little bit because Prabhupada is explaining. And in the Nectar of Devotion, which is Prabhupada's translation of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of nectar. Right? So it does, the first half of the book describes foundational devotional principles. The second half of the book goes into the feelings and emotions that go on. But you have to have a foundation or you will just apply your material understanding to it and not get anywhere. So the foundation is always important. It's sort of like this shape, like an X or something, where the substance, like Buddhism only goes to where it all disappears. Where it crosses, there's nothing. There's a lot of substance in the material world. As we progress spiritually and go higher, it's narrower and narrower. Because we start to control our senses. And we start to detach and understand that it's all just illusion, it's all just material energy. So we get to nothing, but then it opens up. So we have this foundation of having detached. Then we can become attached, and as we progress spiritually, more and more. So it's sort of like an X. I try to explain that, and sometimes I can't figure out how to say it. But, we have to reduce first before we can expand, not expand right away. Katya.
Yeah, I just remembered that like Radha and her, everything about Radha is so intimate and we just can't understand it. We may feel that we understand, we think that we understand, but it's not. And advanced devotees, they never feel it. They actually can't even utter your name. And Prabhupada was telling that when he was in Vrindavan they greet each other like Radhe Radhe or something like this. And he never answered Radhe Radhe. He was also always answering Hare Krishna.
Wow.
And his devotees, his disciples who were accompanying him, they were telling that Prabhupada never answered the Radhe Radhe. He was always saying Hare Krishna. And he never, like Janvata Swami, he gave very seminar about Kirtan standards, and he was saying that Prabhupada never sang Jai Radha, Madhava-priya, or Radhe, Jai Radhe. And we should, that in name of Radha is so auspicious that
He taught us Jai Radha Madhava, did he?
No, I mean, in the end, we chant normally sometimes Jai Radha, Radha Kanta Radha, and so on, or Jai Radhe, Jai Radhe, Jai Radhe, Jai Shri. So it's not like it's offensive, but actually her name is so, it's so hard to understand everything about Radha that if sometimes you read a book and Shukadeva Goswami or someone, they not call her name, they call her indirectly, they tell her name, but not like Radha. They indirectly, we understand that they're saying about Radha, but they don't pronounce her name because they may fall in ecstasy, but also it's because they feel that they're not, they can't pronounce it because they're so fallen. So, and that's why we can't just go on Radharani's pastimes and feel like we understand everything because it's so hard to understand, and even elevated devotee, they don't speak about it.
Wow, thank you.
That's why they.
But Prabhupada certainly chanted Jai Radha Madhava. He
No,
would
yeah,
basics,
for
you know,
sure.
but,
There are some songs, bhajan, we sing Radha, but I mean, in some ways we not like tell Radha, 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 Radha. It's not.
Yeah, sometimes the devotees think it's really cool to chant Radha, 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 and so on and so on.
Yeah.
That's not really bona fide in this kind.
Yeah,
Because
there's,
Radha is not separated from Krishna, so it's
Yeah.
one of the
yeah,
reasons.
there's that one song, Radhe, Radhe, Radhe.
Yeah, I don't like that song. It's like demanding of Radha.
Radhe.
Yeah, I don't really like it.
But in Vrindavan, we have to realize that the Vrindavanites, the Rajvasis,
Yeah.
they're considered very highly
Yeah,
spiritual.
in order to live, having been born in Vrindavan, they are high. So we're not criticizing that they say
Jai
Jai
Radhe.
Radhe when you say Hare Krishna. to
That's
them.
interesting that Prabhupada didn't. He said Hare Krishna.
No, but he was a strong example.
Yeah.
Like in Srimad Bhagavatam it said that until you advance, you should not stay in Vrindavan for a long time.
Right.
Because you will become
gonna
familiar
offense.
with, yeah.
Yeah,
You'll
will
make you
criticize and fault.
yeah.
you'll make a mistake and an offense. Yeah.
Okay, so let go of the idea of that Krishna consciousness is, let go temporarily of the idea that Krishna consciousness is about this love story between Radha and Krishna. Get the foundation first. It's wonderful philosophy. It's so beautiful. This philosophy is so endlessly fascinating and beautiful. You've got years worth of growing in the philosophy and Krishna's other pastimes, coward boyfriends, battles, being a king, other incarnations. There's so much that first comes first, you know. Not to never mention, not to be afraid to mention or not chant Jai Radha Madhava or something. Hare Krishna is Radha Krishna. Hare means Radha. Not that we don't say, but just we don't go into it until we get the foundation. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.